Hey everyone, let's jump right into this. Today, we're taking a massive deep dive into nature's absolute strangest anomalies. We're pulling back the curtain on creatures that honestly look like they just stepped off a sci-fi movie set. I absolutely love unpacking these biological mysteries because they show us just how wildly creative and, yeah, sometimes completely chaotic the natural world can really be. So get ready to have your mind totally blown as we explore the real, hard science behind nature's most incredible physical anomalies. So, what if monsters were real? I really want you to think about that for a second. We all grew up with these crazy stories of mythical beasts and terrifying mutants, right? But what actually happens when you step out into the forest or look down into a river and you literally come face to face with something that just defies all logic? Well, today, we're going to challenge our perception of reality and take a pretty mysterious, captivating biological journey to find out. Okay, let's dive into this. The line between ancient mythology and biological reality is actually thinner than you think. And that perfectly sets the stage for our explainer today. We're going to demystify these bizarre animal phenomena. So instead of just staring at these creatures for pure shock value, we're going to replace those gasps with some seriously fascinating scientific truths. Because, trust me, understanding the biology of how these anomalies actually happen is way more incredible than any myth. Section 1, Real Myths of Nature. It's time to take a look at some of this ancient lore and see how it stacks up against hard scientific evidence. Take the mythical unicorn, for example. You know, we all picture this magical, majestic horse, but the scientific reality? It's something called cranial fusion. Imagine you're walking through the woods and you see a deer with a single horn growing exactly in the dead center of its head. You totally think you found a unicorn, right? Well, normally, deer have two symmetrical growth points on their skull. But in exceptionally rare cases, those structures are born too close together, or they completely fuse, forming just one central horn. The rest of the deer, its coat, legs, overall size, develops completely normally. There was actually this very famous case over in Italy back in 2008 where a young roe deer was found with exactly this anomaly. And as long as the fusion doesn't deform the brain or skull, which, can cause vision and balance issues, these real-life unicorns can live perfectly normal lives. Moving on to another myth brought to life, Cyclopia. It sounds exactly like the old Greek myth of the Cyclops, right? But it is a very real biological condition. It happens during the absolute earliest stages of embryonic development, when the anterior brain basically fails to properly divide into two halves. The result? The eyes can remain united, forming a single ocular cavity right in the center of the face. We actually see this sometimes in pigs. While a cyclops pig might have totally normal legs, skin, and an apparently normal body, its face has an extreme deformity, sometimes even featuring a weird, small trunk-like structure just above that single eye. Now, the really crucial point here is the tragic nature of this condition. While photos of these animals circulate online all the time and honestly look like Photoshop jobs, they are incredibly real and just extremely rare. But because the brain and skull haven't separated correctly, cyclopia is almost always accompanied by severe cranial and respiratory defects. It's important to understand this with a lot of empathy. These creatures rarely survive. The vast majority actually don't even make it to birth, or they only survive for a few minutes to maybe a few hours due to those extreme complications. Section 2, Cell Division Errors. Let's shift our focus a bit and look at the incredible fragility of embryonic development, specifically what happens when cell division goes terribly wrong. And this leads us to something called dicephaly. Think about it. What would happen if a cow was born with two heads attached to the exact same body? It sounds literally impossible, but this phenomenon has actually been recorded several times. It all starts out exactly like the formation of identical twins, but then that absolutely critical separation process just stops abruptly. Let's walk through exactly how this happens. Step 1, the embryo starts the normal identical twin process. But step 2, midway through, that separation completely fails. And finally, step 3, the frontal region successfully divides into two heads while the rest of the body remains completely united. Breaking down the complex biology like this shows us exactly how a single calf ends up developing two heads, two necks, and sometimes even two completely separate brains, all while sharing just one physical body. And here's the really harsh reality of having two brains in one body. These calves share vital organs. So one heart, one set of lungs, one digestive system, but with two brains, you have total chaos in the command center. I mean, think about it. If one head decides it wants to walk left, but the other wants to go right, you have total gridlock.
Even basic functions like feeding become incredibly difficult, even if both mouths work perfectly. Because of these severe internal conflicts and just a complete lack of coordination, most of these dicephalic calves are sadly stillborn or only survive for a few short days.
Now, let's consider polyophthalmia. This is the abnormal division of eye tissues during embryo formation, resulting in an additional ocular bud. Basically, we're talking about a three-eyed cow. The animal actually develops a third eye structure, usually right smack in the middle of its forehead. Now, this extra eye is mostly non-functional. It might be partially formed, covered by skin, or just lack a complete connection to the brain entirely. While it might technically react to light, it probably isn't forming useful images, so no, it's not exactly reading your mind. But what's truly amazing here is that, unlike the previous conditions we just discussed, cows with this third eye often grow and survive completely normally.
Section 3. Misplaced anatomy. Let's move to and see how this builds as we explore animals whose organs, quite simply, just grew in the wrong place.
Okay, you've probably seen those viral internet videos of the so-called human-faced fish, right? Let's debunk that right now. While a lot of those videos are definitely manipulated, real fish with these uncanny human-like features absolutely do exist. But no, it's not some strange sci-fi hybrid. It's actually caused by the natural shape of the fish's head, specific scale patterns that literally trick our brains into seeing human features, or in some cases, real craniofacial deformities that physically alter the position of the eyes and mouth. Following the biological timeline explains one of the strangest deformities we've ever observed in amphibians. The metamorphosis from a tadpole to an adult frog is extremely complex. Phase 1, the tadpole begins its transformation. Phase 2, the legs develop and the tail drops, along with a massive reorganization of the head and internal organs. But Phase 3, if the biological signals guiding this growth fail midway, things go terribly wrong. Leading to Phase 4, structures migrate to completely incorrect regions, resulting in a frog whose eyes grow entirely inside its mouth. Externally, the frog appears totally eyeless. The whole wild anomaly is only revealed when it opens its mouth. So you're probably wondering, how on earth does a frog like this survive? Well, because its eyes are inside its mouth, normal vision is completely impossible. Plus, eating is incredibly hard because those fully formed eyes occupy the exact space it needs to capture and swallow prey. But life is remarkably resilient, isn't it? To adapt to this forced darkness, these frogs have to navigate their environment by relying entirely on the extreme sensitivity of their skin, using the subtle vibrations in the water around them just to orient themselves. Section 4. Surviving without a head. Now we're shifting from embryonic mutations to what is honestly a miraculous story of post-birth biological resilience. To really understand how this works, we have to look closely at the brainstem. You see, for birds, a massive chunk of their vital functions is controlled by the brainstem, which is located way down in the lower posterior region of the skull. Theoretically, if this specific area remains completely intact, an animal's body can just continue breathing, maintaining a heartbeat, and performing reflex movements. They aren't consciously aware, sure, but it perfectly explains how a bird could physically stand up and move around without a head for a short time. And that underlying biology beautifully explains the absolute miracle of Mike the Headless Chicken. Back in 1945, Mike lost his head, but incredibly, an essential part of his brainstem and a major vein were left completely intact. By month 1, his owner had adapted to feeding him by placing a small tube directly into his esophagus, and astonishingly, Mike survived for approximately 18 months. Seriously, 18 months. He was walking around trying to peck at the ground and making all these automatic movements typical of a normal bird. It remains one of the most unbelievable phenomena ever recorded in the animal world. Section 5. Mutation or perfect adaptation. Let's get into our final creature, where we'll see that what looks like a mutation is actually a sheer masterpiece of evolutionary perfection. Meet the Amazon glass frog. Now, when viewed from above, this little green frog looks totally normal. But when you look at it from below, its skin is completely transparent. It is literally a window into biological resilience. You can clearly see its beating heart, its liver, its entire digestive system. But unlike everything else we've discussed today, this transparency is absolutely not a deformity. It is a brilliant, highly evolved natural camouflage. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how exactly this frog pulls off this magic trick. These frogs live in the super humid forests of Central and South America, right near streams. They actually deposit their eggs on suspended leaves so that when the tadpoles hatch, they drop safely directly into the water below. But the most impressive feat happens when these frogs rest. They are able to actively concentrate almost all of their red blood cells entirely inside their liver. By pulling the red blood completely out of circulation, they drastically decrease the amount of visible blood in their bodies, becoming even more transparent and virtually invisible to predators while they sleep. Nature's ultimate disappearing act.
Which leaves us with a really provocative question to end on. Does nature make mistakes, or does it just try new possibilities? Whether it's a cranial fusion that mirrors a mythical unicorn, a frog learning to see through water vibrations, or a transparent amphibian intentionally hiding its own blood, every single anomaly we've explored today is a profound testament to how relentlessly nature experiments with life. What might look like a monster or a mistake to us is often just biology exploring a totally new path. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning what you see and definitely keep exploring the incredible possibilities of the natural world.